But first, that damning report that's revealed killer policeman Wayne Couzens tried to kidnap a woman at knife point and sexually assaulted a young girl before he murdered Sarah Everard. The shocking dossier highlights how the firearms specialist went undetected by at least 3 bungling forces who failed to spot the glaring red flags. Despite reportedly exposing himself on 8 occasions, Couzens passed vetting for both the Met and the Civil Nuclear Constabulary before he went on to abduct, rape and kill Sarah in South London 3 years ago. Well, today's long-awaited report criticised the lamentable and lethargic vetting efforts, adding Couzens should never have been a police officer.
Failures in recruitment and vetting meant Couzens was able to continue a policing career which should have been denied to him. Failures in investigations into allegations of indecent exposure meant opportunities to disrupt Couzens' offending and bring his policing career to a halt were missed. Crucially, the report shows how police recruitment and vetting failed to spot red flags about Couzens' unsuitability. Red flags were repeatedly ignored, meaning he was granted the privilege of serving in 3 separate police forces.
Well, responding to today's report, the Home Secretary announced police officers will face automatic suspension if charged with certain criminal offences. James Cleverly said anyone not fit to wear the uniform must be removed from duties.
Most police officers, of course, use their powers to serve the public bravely and well. But when they fall short, the impact can be devastating. Society cannot function properly where trust in police is eroded. And I'm unambiguous that police forces must keep improving and must command the confidence of the people that they serve. And it's imperative that police leadership, of whatever rank, plays their part in this endeavour.
Well, Sarah Everard's family welcomed the report, while Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley described its findings as an urgent call to action for all of us in policing.
We have a long way to go to build the high degree of resilience and strength to reduce to an absolute minimum the threat of anybody so horrific being within policing.
Well, yes, it's an urgent act to, it's an urgent call to act, but we've had urgent calls to act multiple times. There were reports, big reports done in 2012 and 2019 and 2022 and 2023 saying that the vetting process for police needs to be fixed and amended and tightened, and it hasn't changed. And the Home Secretary today saying that there should be, a new code of practice that will stop these vetting failures, but it's not mandatory. So I don't see that it's going to make much difference. And the other issue that, again, experts have been saying for ages is that indecent exposure as a crime is not taken seriously enough, that it is a proper gateway to much more serious sexual offences, including rape and, in this case, murder, that's the red flag. And that all these occasions where people like Wayne Couzens do expose themselves in this way, that the police simply are not following them up. And they had his registration number. They knew where he lived. They knew he was a police officer. So the third question is, did they not follow it up because they don't follow any of these cases that they don't deem to be serious enough, but they should, just as par for the course? Or did they not follow it up because they knew he was a police officer, which would suggest some sort of corruption?
I would have thought that would have they would be able to at least make some headway in trying to establish that. I mean, the idea that indecent exposure is not a very serious offence is extraordinary. I mean, to me, you wouldn't have to have a degree in criminology to know that that is possibly, even if it's not a gateway to anything, which I would imagine it absolutely is, but just in itself is surely a pretty, pretty horrendous thing to do in the first place.
1/4 of men who expose themselves indecently in this way go on to commit a more serious crime. 1/4 of them.
Yeah, and if you are, subjected to seeing that, it does stay with you forever. I actually remember being a victim of that as quite a young child, and I didn't know what it was. I mean, I was in a train station. I must have been, I don't know, maybe 10 years old. And, this was a different era where there was no porn in those days. I didn't know what was going on. And I remember telling my dad, and my dad, swung into action and tried to sort it out. But I've never forgotten that experience. And it's a bit like cruelty to animals. You know, somebody who is sadistically cruel to animals, that is such a marker of someone who is going to do something awful at a greater scale. You know, my view, and most of us will agree, in itself, being cruel to animals is a grotesque and awful thing, and we probably don't take it nearly seriously enough. The other thing I find quite unsettling about all of this is seeing the Home Secretary standing up in the Commons announcing, as if in a blaze of publicity, that from now on, you know, if you're charged with a certain number, you're a serving police officer and you're charged with a certain serious number of serious offences, that's automatically you out. Why isn't that already the case? I mean,
well, I mean, exactly.
Why are we announcing that?
I mean, Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, to his credit, has said, you know, give me the powers to sack police officers. I mean, it's a bit like the civil service. I mean, once you're in the police force, it's very, very difficult to get you out. You could be suspended on full pay, but even getting to that stage is very, very difficult. I mean, I think this is an excellent report. Lady Angiolini, I've never heard of before, looks like she's knows what she's doing and has written a
very
pretty
senior,
forceful
I think she was Attorney
report.
General in Scotland.
And, you know, and it's all very well for Mark Rowley to say it's a wake-up call for the police, but there's been wake-up call after wake-up call. And what I kind of really find frustrating is that for so many years one dismisses some of this stuff as wokery or banter or harmless. It's not. And people who kind of take a zero-tolerance approach to this should not be dismissed as being kind of overly prescriptive. They should recognise that we need to ensure that there aren't bad apples in the police force because they have extraordinary powers. And the thing that makes me so sad, of course, all of us, is, you know, this killing should never have happened.
No, and it could have been avoided.
Woman.
Yeah. With the thing of exposure, indecent exposure, that's got to be changed because if a man's caught urinating in public, the police can still do you for indecent exposure, even if you're not there doing it in a sexual way. You're urinating, but it's still classed as, that's the same as the exposure as Couzens going and flashing people. But in the report, they say without significant overhaul, there's nothing to stop another Couzens operating in plain sight. Well, we know from Sir Mark Rowley that, from his own words, we're going to be seeing essentially 2 coppers each week in the dock for crimes. So it's not just a case of there could be another Couzens operating in plain sight. There are lots of Couzens in the police forces across this country operating in plain sight.
And coming back to Isabel's point, which is a really good one, about suspending a police officer when he's charged with a domestic abuse or a sexual crime. Yvette Cooper stood up in the Commons today and made the point, which I completely agree with. It shouldn't be when you're charged. It should be when you're investigated.
Yeah.
You should be suspended. And then, you know, if the investigation proves that actually this was malicious on behalf of an ex-partner, whatever it might be, then you're welcome back into the police force with open arms. But it shouldn't be when it gets to being charged.
Yes,
it should be when the investigation
provided
starts.
the investigation is quick and swift.
That's really important. I was going to say the same, that you don't want somebody suspended, as all too often happens in other walks of public life. They're suspended for up to a year, sometimes longer, their whole life on hold. And then at the end of that long saga, it's found that there's no case to answer.
Absolutely, but let's not forget, this is the police. And I think it's fair if their rules are a bit stricter because, A, they have that huge position of authority and they are the police. They could investigate quickly. That's what they're meant to do for a living.
The police would tell a slightly different story on this, and I've hosted debates with the police on this. The IOPC, which seems to have some teeth about it, are ongoing investigating officers all the time on a variety of issues, from sometimes internal matters to something much bigger and serious. And those cases where the officer is left in limbo, believing they've done nothing wrong, can go on for years, sometimes a decade,
so it's got to be a whole
waiting to find out. So that is awful as well. There's got to be a balance here. I mean, the Wayne Couzens thing, I mean, JJ says, you know, there's lots of these. I don't know whether there's lots of Wayne Couzens. There's lots of officers that need to be taken out and kicked out, and that process is clearly not quick enough. And I don't want to say this is a one-off because, you know, we know there are other worrying cases, but the amount of opportunities to nab this guy
are extraordinary. The reason I say there's more Wayne Couzens because we know there's officers who are sharing pictures of dead people, of murdered sisters.
Yeah, exactly. And that should be an instant
Exactly.
dismissal.
Yeah. And I mean, so many issues are very troubling about this, but the vetting procedure, particularly once he moved from Kent to become an armed police officer, the vetting procedure doesn't even include a face-to-face interview. It doesn't even include a home visit. These are people who are going to be given guns. If you have applied for a firearms licence as a member of the public, you get a home visit. So why wouldn't you get a home visit if you're going to be a policeman or woman carrying a firearm?
Well, do you know what, Daisy?
If you adopt a dog from Batty Dogs Home, you get a home visit. This is ridiculous.
That's
the
absolutely
vetting
right.
procedure.
I spoke to a former cop this afternoon, Roy Ram, who made that point when he first joined the police force back in the day. You had a home visit to talk to you, to talk to your parents, to talk to other friends would be just talk to, maybe a teacher, etc. It doesn't establish everything, it doesn't stop everything, but that's how they did it. And I think I'm right in saying that this report today did allude to things such as that are clearly missing in the recruitment process.
Yeah, it did. And I agree. I think she did a very good job.